His images document what it means to be human in the midst of war, and many of them have become iconic. Photojournalist Ron Haviv has spent a long career covering dozens of conflicts around the globe, including the war in Ukraine. He joins me for this GMF talk. Ron, of the numerous conflicts you've covered over the years, what, if anything, is different about covering the war in Ukraine?
I think one of the things is that the attention of the world has been pretty constant, a huge desire of wanting to know what's happening on the ground. And of course, images play a very important role in that. And I think that combined with the ability that now everybody has a camera, not only the photographers, but the soldiers, the civilians, and so on, as well as surveillance video and drone video and so on, this is going to be without question the most documented conflict of all time.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned citizen journalism there. What would you say are some of the challenges as well as the opportunities for journalists in the age of citizen journalism and digital media more broadly?
Well, I think one of the greatest beneficiaries of this sort of new way of documenting war is the audience, because they're able to now see things that we've never been able to see before. But there still absolutely is a need for people like myself, authors, journalists trained with integrity, that we are out there telling the truth through an independent voice, telling these stories often more in depth, more time spent with the subjects, whether soldiers on the ground, civilians sheltering in place, or fleeing for their home. I think when you combine the work of the professional journalists with everything else together, you're now being able to understand a conflict that we have never really been able to understand in this way before.
Finally, if I could ask you about mental health. You've witnessed some of the most horrific acts of depravity and violence in the course of your work. How do you cope, or how have you coped with the things that you've seen and experienced? And do you have any tips for younger journalists in terms of how to look after their mental health?
Well, historically, this the concept of experiencing trauma, documenting trauma, has resulted in kind of the cliche of the journalist at the bar, the journalist collapsing after a certain period of time because they can't handle everything that they've witnessed. But primarily, pretty much since the war in Bosnia, there's been a real change in the attitude of trying to remove the stigma from post-traumatic stress, from trying to deal and allow journalists coming back from war zones or any other kind of traumatic incidents from like a natural disaster, like a earthquake or something like that, that there needs to be conversations that need to be happening. And there needs to be an awareness of what can happen. Because especially for those that continue to do this month in and month out, things build up. And I've experienced that. I suffered from PTSD in Iraq, arriving in Baghdad in 2003. I was not in good shape. And luckily, through the work of people like Dr. Anthony Feinstein, they've determined that journalists suffer statistically the same amount of kind of post-traumatic stress that a soldier might encounter. And with that kind of understanding and knowing that there are tools out there, aside from talking to your colleagues, but professional help and so on, that people can be helped. And you don't need to find solace in a bottle or have your relationship break up or so on. That now this is something to acknowledge. It happens to all of us, and you're able to, if you want, to deal with your issues and then go back to work if that's something that you desire.
Ron Haviv, thank you so much for your time, and goodbye from this GMF talk. See you again soon.